Greetings, everyone. With this drawing, I'm going to take inspiration from this Hot Wheels Snoopy car, which I think is pretty neat. With this, I'm going to see if I can draw a version of that, which is Snoopy as the fighter pilot Ace. And yeah, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. So, I'm just going to open up my ink bottle. Wow, did I ever put the cap on tight? There we go. All right. I don't know what size I'm going to go with, so we'll start off with just doing a rough shape of the head. Just like that. Now let's see if you can zoom in on this just a little bit. Okay, that's not so bad there. Now, I'm going to, yes, kind of work on the eyes first. I'm not going to do this exactly the way Charles would have done it, because I'm not Charles. I don't really like copying how somebody else does their artwork. You might have heard me talking in the last video about being inspired by different comic strips from the newspaper. Jim Davies is awesome, Garfield. It's just kind of strange over the years how you would spend time with these characters, and in a lot of ways, this is how you got to know the artist too. Like with Charlie Brown, of course, Charlie Brown and Charles Schultz are the same person, to some degree. Of course, everyone loves Snoopy. Personally, I kind of always liked Woodstock. There's something about Woodstock that was just kind of funny. It didn't say anything really. That character, I think, meant a lot to me. And Linus, for some reason, too. And Linus, I think, was probably overall my favorite character. And it wasn't just because he had a security blanket. Now, I didn't have a security blanket. Sometimes he was the voice of reason. I'm not saying I was the voice of reason. But he just seemed to be the only one that would be paying enough attention to things to clear things up. So if you've seen, like, Charlie Brown Christmas, he's the one that would tell everybody, what the true meaning of Christmas was all about. Anyway, I always liked Linus. Now with this one, I'm going to take my time just a little bit and sort of think out where I'm putting things. It's a little fuzzy on the end of my pen here. Okay. I'm just going kind of light here to start. And that way some of the darker lines that I set in after will be kind of hidden a little bit. Now, this is kind of the way that I picture Snoopy as the ace. Where he seems to be using his imagination. Sitting on the roof of his house. Now let's see. It's kind of funny. Well, not really funny, but I think it was sort of a misinformation campaign that when the Red Baron was shot down, well, there were people that were, I mean, he was notorious and infamous and all that kind of stuff, but probably one of the best pilots of World War One. Some people actually attributed him being shot down to Billy Bishop, which I think they had a version of like a dog fight maybe a year before. So, but I don't think Billy Bishop was around for that. I think they actually gave the credit to Captain Roy Brown, and it was most likely that he was shot down by like an anti-plane gun, anti-aircraft. Anyway, but I mean, it was such a big deal. And I think the guy who was given the credit for it, I don't think he really enjoyed that notoriety. I mean, he would have been a great pilot. I think he actually tried out to be a pilot in World War II as well, and didn't get that assignment. But yeah, Billy Bishop I don't think had anything to do with that. Oh, let's go back down here because I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to place. We'll flatten out his bottom here a little bit too, as if he's sitting on the roof. Gives me an idea where I'm going to place the arms. I'm going to have rolled up sleeves on his jacket. course, we'll have pockets. Yeah, I don't know where that rumor came from and why that floats around in my head that that's what people would have thought about Billy Bishop and the Red Baron. Of course, there was a little popular song. So that was kind of part of it, maybe. I don't know. Nothing to do with Billy Bishop, but I mean, the Red Baron. Let's put in his tail. That's probably long enough. Oh, that's funny. Have you ever seen or heard of a show called The Raccoons? Something about this and looking at this reminds me a little bit of, I think the character was called Snare or Cyril Snare. That's kind of funny. This would be his arm on the other side. So we'll kind of do like a similar look to the back of the hand here, but with this one we'll see just a little bit of the hand on the other side. His fingers, one slightly more complete there, and the rest is all hidden. Now with this side, let's say we have one foot, or the other foot I should say, kind of leaning forward a little bit. The toes would kind of curl underneath there. That's kind of roughly what we're going for. Now let's see if we can add just a bit more detail, although I've been adding detail as we go, so shouldn't have to do a lot. The Red Baron's actual name was Manfred, which I remember from the name of a group, Manfred Mann, although the Red Baron's last name was like von Richthofen or Richthofen, something like that. And I'm sure he enjoyed the notoriety. I don't know any fighter pilots, but I know people who've flown planes, and you kind of have to have a different mentality to be above the ground and control something above the ground. Not a bad thing, you just have to have a lot of confidence to do that kind of thing. You have to be pretty sure of yourself. believe this type of head wear, the pilot's cap, I think this version might have been called like a Biggles helmet. And I think they were under the impression, which I guess in some ways it would be, because they sat exposed inside of the cockpit of the airplane, the wind would burn their faces. So wearing a leather cap or something to protect their faces was an ideal thing. So in this case, Snoopy's ears would have been tucked in, not necessarily, flailing in the wind like the scarf here. Put a little bit of shading in there, which I may bring out the paintbrush and water for anyway. It's weird the kind of information that I have inside of my head. There was a time, and I joke about this with my nieces and nephews, that I was Google before people had their smartphones and would Google, because I just had so much weird information. Not enough of anything in particular, just enough that if you were to say, oh, what about John Denver or something like that, or I might know a little bit, not a lot, but I'd know something. I'm not a know-it-all. I just kind of collect information. I've always been kind of a collector in that way. And that kind of happens a little bit too when you draw from memory a lot. As you try to remember detail. Because I think a lot of us like to draw from references. And if you have the reference in your head, you don't have to have, like, right now I have that in front of me. You know what I mean? But I'm not drawing this. I'm drawing, something that I remember Snoopy actually wearing. And I don't have to have that reference in front of me to do that. It's okay if you do. But when you collect information the way that I do, and you can kind of see it in your head, it's almost, similar to keeping that thing in front of you if you're able to do that. So this is a slightly more elaborate sketch. Not super elaborate. hopefully you're doodling along with me. Now we're going to work on the feet just a little bit. I'm kind of moving a little bit in the direction of where I think the fur would go for multiple lines rather than just a single line. Of course, you don't have to do it this way. I know people that when they draw, they tend to just use lines. And I think that's fascinating. I can draw like that a little bit, but not very often, because lines will sometimes shake with my hands and then they just kind of disappear, or they're hard to make disappear. So I'm not always a fan of line drawing, but I think it follows a certain part of the way my mentality works, of living with a mistake. And one version of line drawing would be not lifting your pen, for example, and kind of the straight line would be a great way to start, and then just kind of wiggle it into a pair of shoes or something like that. You know, you're making laces. I have to be careful talking out loud because I might actually do something like that on this. That would be hilarious. This is another bad habit of mine, is turning pages sideways. It's not really a bad habit, I should say. Some people, they actually... there we go. They turn their head sideways to read book spines, for example, that are sideways. I don't really do that. Let's see. But I like to try to keep my hands in a certain position when I draw, just so my wrists don't give out. I think that's kind of the... that's kind of it, really, for that. At about 25 minutes, that's as much of that drawing, I think, as that, detail-wise. I don't think I need to put any smearing on his face. I may not need to bring out the brush. That's probably such an interesting sort of thing floating around in my head at the moment. I think we'll just let this be the ink drawing. Let's put in some little scratches of wear and tear. Some slight shading, which I would naturally bring out in the brush. it's definitely in the detail stuff where, you know, how it finishes looks. Now, of course, I could draw a version of this, I'm sure, in less than 5 minutes. But it's fun to pick at these kind of things a little bit with the pen. Just doing a little bit of an outline on that. I'm trying to remember. I think Charles Schultz's middle name is like Monroe. Yeah. Kind of like Maryland. Not exactly. But you know. See that? If you look close enough, that almost looks like the Snoopy eyes. That's just kind of funny. I get a kick out of that. He was an interesting cartoonist. He really was. We'll say this is Snoopy. I think that's going to be it. Thanks for hanging out for a little while with me. And yeah, no, I think I'm able to leave this one alone for now, and it's kind of fun to do. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you again at some point in the near future.